All right, let's talk about one of the biggest, most debated topics in the React world, state management. But forget what you think you know. This isn't another explainer about which library is best. No, this is about a whole new discipline for building apps that are just ridiculously fast and easy to scale. So let's dive in.
Yeah, this right here, this is the core idea for our entire conversation. The whole library wars thing, it's over. The new game is all about following a few key principles that focus on performance and, honestly, simplicity. It's about being thoughtful and intentional with your code, not just reaching for the latest hot package on NPM.
So, where do we start? Well, it all kicks off with our first, and I'd argue most important pillar, location. Just like in real estate, where you decide to put your state pretty much determines everything that follows. Its performance, how easy it is to maintain, all of it.
And here it is, the absolute golden rule. Your first thought, your default setting, should always be to keep state tucked away inside the smallest possible component that actually needs it. Think about it. Every single time you decide to lift state up, you're basically inviting a whole bunch more components to re-render, creating this huge blast radius for every little update.
Okay, so this is a super common trap we've all fallen into. It's so tempting to just throw state into a layout or some global store because it feels convenient at the moment. But the right way, the performant way, is clear. For simple UI stuff, like toggling a drop-down menu, that state belongs right there, inside the drop-down component itself. Always, always try to push state down, not up.
So why are we so obsessed with this? Well, because when you keep state local, you get fewer re-renders. Your render trees are smaller. Memoization, React.memo, actually works the way it's supposed to. And your code? It's a million times easier to figure out what's going on when you have to debug something. It's a massive win all around.
Now, of course, this doesn't mean global state is evil. It's not. It just means we have to be really surgical about when we use it. And this right here is your cheat sheet. Is the piece of data something truly global? Like, is the user logged in? Or what's the current theme of the site? Great. Global state is perfect for that. But is it something temporary, like what's typed into a form or which filters are active? Nope. Keep that stuff local.
Now, for what is probably the biggest mindset shift of all, especially if you're working with the Next.js app router. For years, the pattern was fetch data from the server, bring it to the client, and then manage it there with tools like React Query or SWR. Well, that era is pretty much over. The server is now the single source of truth for server state.
So what does that actually look like? This new flow is way simpler. You fetch your data directly in server components. Next.js takes care of all the smart caching for you. You can revalidate that data whenever you need to, and you stream the UI to the user with suspense. The client gets to be so much lighter, just focusing on what it's good at, user interactions. And let me be absolutely crystal clear about this one. Putting state into your layout files is a performance nightmare. It's a guaranteed way to make sure that every single route change, every child's component, everything, re-renders all the time. You completely destroy any chance for memoization. Layouts need to be stateless. They should be pure, simple server components whenever you can make them. Okay, on to our second pillar. So once we know where our state should live, the next obvious question is, how do we manage it? This is all about picking the right tool for the specific job you're trying to do. We really need to talk about React Context because there's a huge misunderstanding about what it's for. It wasn't built to be a state management library. It was designed to solve one specific problem, prop drilling. And it has a fatal flaw for state management. When its value changes, it re-renders every single component that consumes it, even if that component only cares about a tiny piece of the state that didn't even change. This means the actual use case for context is incredibly narrow. You should use it for things that are really stable and almost never change. Think of it like a dependency injection system for a client library or maybe some configuration data. But for values that change all the time, like active filters or a search query, just avoid it. Trust me, you'll thank me later when your app isn't re-rendering constantly. So if you can't use context for that kind of reactive global state, then what's the alternative? Well, the answer is these modern, lightweight stores like Zoostant or Jotai. They are built from the ground up to solve this exact problem. They let your components subscribe to only the tiny, specific slices of state they actually need, which totally avoids those unnecessary re-renders. Plus, they're super small and play really nicely with server components. And what about when you have really complex state, but it's still local to one component? Hey, before you go and npm install another library, take a look at the tools React already gives you. The Use Reactor hook is absolutely perfect for managing tricky logic within a component, like a multi-step form. It makes your state updates super predictable, clean, and a whole lot easier to test.
All right, on to our third and final pillar, the optimization playbook. This is where we get into the advanced stuff. These are the techniques that take an app from being pretty good to being insanely fast in performance.
Oh man, this is such a classic mistake, and I see it all the time. You have a list of items, and then you create another piece of state to hold a filtered version of that list. Don't do it. The right approach is to compute that filtered list on the fly every single time, and just wrap that calculation in Use Memo. That way, your data is always fresh, and you avoid an entire category of bugs. So why is this so bad? Because when you store derived data in state, you open up a Pandora's box of problems. You start getting these weird double updates, it's super easy for your filtered list to get out of sync with the original source of truth, and you're triggering a ton of re-renders you just don't need. It's just a mess. This next principle sounds really simple, but it has a huge impact. Keep your state minimal. Seriously, you should avoid dumping entire API responses, massive objects, or deeply nested data structures directly into your state. So what's the solution? The key is to only store the bare minimum that actually changes. Usually these are just primitive values like IDs or Booleans or statuses. Then you create the bigger objects you need by normalizing your data and using MemoWise selectors to do any expensive transformations. Keep your state lean and make your selectors do the heavy lifting. And finally, a big one. You have to remember that React re-renders a component when its props change. So if you're passing things like an inline object or an arrow function directly in your JSX, you're creating a brand new reference on every single render. This forces your child components to re-render needlessly. You've got to stabilize those props with Use Memo and Use Callback to keep your component tree nice and steady. Okay, let's bring it all home. What we've talked about today isn't just a random list of tips and tricks. It's a complete, cohesive mindset for how to think about state in a modern React and Next.js application. This list right here, this is your new checklist. Minimize your state, localize your state, keep your server data on the server, use client state only for client interactivity, and stabilize everything. This is how you build apps that aren't just fast when you launch them, but stay fast, predictable, and scalable no matter how much they grow. We've just covered 10 core principles, and when you put them all together, they form a complete discipline for state management, one that puts performance and a great developer experience at the very center of everything. So I'll just leave you with this one question to think about. When you go back to your own projects, take a hard look and ask yourself, is my state strategy built for the old world of client-side everything, or is it built for the fast, server-centric, optimized web of tomorrow? Thanks for tuning in.